The Russians basically have cut off the major cities, Kiev, Kharkov, Mariupol, Lugansk, Donetsk. They've cut them off. Well, Lugansk and Donetsk are now under control of the Russians, but they've cut off the cities and cut off the armies. There's no longer a centralized defensive strategy by the Ukrainians. And so it's just a matter of time. When you have a divided army and divided defenses, that's what's currently happening. It's just a matter of time before the attacking forces, in this case the Russians, they're going to take over. And by the way, the reason they call this strategy the cauldron, because what they do is they surround a pocket of resistance or a group of soldiers or a city. They surround it and then slowly start turning up the heat, like on a cauldron. And it's a famous strategy that the Russians have employed from the beginning of the 19th century. It's nothing new. It's slow, grinding, methodical. And this is how the Russians are winning this conflict. And what's really interesting is that so many people in the commentariat in the West think that the Russians are losing. And you wonder why, because the Russians are taking over towns. The Russians are advancing troops. And you're trying to understand, why do the very, very smart people in the West think that the Russians are losing? And then you understand why. And it took me a while for me to figure it out. Because we are so used to, over the last 30 years, that when the Americans go to war, how do they go to war? They send their Air Force to completely bombard a city, destroy it, annihilate it. They start with the infrastructure, with the electrical grid, telephony. Then they go after water mains, heating, heating systems, whatnot. They just systematically destroy all of the infrastructure in the city. And this causes enormous damage to the civilian population, which is either killed or left homeless or flees. And once they have softened up, quote unquote, a city like this, which is just basically annihilating the city, then the Americans, or NATO, or call them what you will, the global American empire, the GAE, they roll in essentially a mopping up operation. They've destroyed the city, and then they roll in and take it over. And of course, by that time, there's no resistance whatsoever, and the pockets of resistance are trivial. But the Russians don't fight the war like that. They're not interested in destroying the cities. On the contrary, they want to maintain the cities and minimize civilian casualties as much as they can. What they want to do is to neutralize the opposing armed force. And notice, it's neutralize, not destroy. The Russians are just as happy if somebody surrenders or if an opposing army deserts. They're not trying to kill. They're trying to eliminate the threat that the opposing armed force poses. And so that mentality, frankly, is far more humane. And it makes you realize that the American mode of war that we in the West have become accustomed to over the last 30 years is really despicable. I mean, you start to realize, I am a conservative. Politically, I am conservative. But you and I are probably on opposite sides of the spectrum on a whole host of issues. But when I used to hear men of the left, such as yourself, say that, George Bush was a war criminal and Bill Clinton was a war criminal and all the rest of it, I was like, yeah, okay. But comparing the way the Russians carry out a war and comparing it to how the Americans have carried out a war, I stand corrected. I have to fully agree that the American leaders, people like Tony Blair, like George W. Bush, they truly are war criminals. They committed unspeakable atrocities that served no purpose. They were just, it was wanton destruction. Because I'm seeing how the Russians are carrying out the war. I am in the middle of Kharkov, and I am speaking to you over cell phone. I have internet. I have running water. I have sewage. I have heat, which is crucial in Eastern Europe. Electricity, of course. I mean, everything is normal because the Russians did not go out to destroy the civilian infrastructure. They are not trying to conquer cities. They're trying to neutralize the opposing armed force.